Today I'm going to be making an application that sells seats in a stadium. So imagine you have a stadium and there are different seat groups. There's like seats at the back, seats in the middle, and seats, let's say, at the front. So the seats that are at the front, they're going to be the most expensive. Just for today, we're just going to imagine that a stadium has only one group of seats, and that's going to be the front seat group. Okay, so the seat group at the front has a capacity of 300 seats, 400 per head. 3 seats have been sold, which means there's actually going to be 297 seats left. You've made $1,200 in income. So this application shows that data and then has a text field where you can put the number of seats to sell. You hit sell and it will update all the figures. And then the sell text field is reset to 0. Okay, so let's have a look at the code we already have. We have a stadium application, which extends application. We have a class called stadium. So today this stadium just has a single seat group, and it's the front seat group. So we create that, it's just a private variable. We also have a public getter for that seat group. Inside group, we have 4 fields. We have the name, capacity, price, and sold. We set that in the constructor. And we have a couple getters for all of those. Note how the income and the left getters are actually derived from other values. So income is derived from sold multiplied by the price, and how many seats are left is the capacity minus how many seats were sold. We have a public method to sell seats as well. Okay, so this week we are not going to create the leaf nodes in Java. Instead, we're going to use another language called FXML. So I will create a new empty FXML document. And I'm going to name it Stadium. Alright. FXMLs are kind of built the opposite way to last week. So last week we created the leaf nodes, so those buttons, text fields, and then we added them into an HBox. And then we set the scene to that HBox. Okay, this week we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to be creating, let's say, an HBox. And then we create the leaf nodes inside the HBox. So I'm going to create a label. And I'll give it a text of hello. So that's a label. We can put buttons in, because remember, buttons and labels, they both have a text property. So this is how you set that property within a node. So it's a bit more intuitive. We create the HBox, and then inside the HBox, we have our labels. We have a button. Let's get this FXML loading. So in our Stadium application, I will create a new FXML loader. And the FXML loader loads an FXML. We need to give it the stadium.fxml. So stadium.fxml is what we call a resource. And the way to get resources in Java is to get the class, then get the resource of stadium.fxml. To use the FXML loader, we have to call the load method, and that returns a parent. Next, we set the scene of the stage. Set scene of the stage to a new scene with the root node, and we can show the stage. And there's our label and our button aligned horizontally inside an HBox. Cool. Now we don't want an HBox though. We want this looks like a grid pane. So let's create a grid pane. So I'll replace the start and end of the branch node, and I'll start putting in my leaf nodes. So these are all labels. These are texts. That's a text field and a button. So we have a label. I'm going to set the text to seat group. And then we have a text, and I'll set the text of that to front. Now, I need to import text because it doesn't exist. And the text lives in javafx.scene.text. If you remember, when assigning things to a grid pane, we need to give it the row and the column. The way we can do that is inside each node we put grid pane dot, and then we can put the column index. So the label is at the 0th column, and the text will be at the 1st column. We also must give them a row index, and they're both on the 1st row. So that will look like that. Let's do 2 more. So we have the capacity, and I'll just set it to 300. So this is going to be on the 2nd row. Cool. To save me some typing, I have prepared all the nodes. So we have our seat group, capacity, price, sold, left, income, sell, and also the sell button. And that's what it looks like. I've left the values blank for now. Let's add some padding into this grid pane. So I'm going to add a horizontal gap of 10 and also a vertical gap of 10. And I'm also going to align the button to the right. Whoops. Okay. Okay, that looks more like the example. Let's make this button do something. So remember, the button has a property, an onAction property. So I will set the onAction property by just typing onAction equals, and then here we'll give it a function to call. So I'm going to name it handleCell. And what it will do is when you click the button, it will call the handleCell method in the controller. So every fxml document should have a controller, and the controller is a thing that manages the view. So at the root node, I will add in an fx controller, and I'm going to name this a stadium controller. To create the controller, we just need to create a class, and I'll name it stadium controller. Okay, then what do we need? We needed a method called handleCell. And that just looks something like that. If you remember, onAction, they have one parameter, and that's the action event. Just to make sure this is working. And print that out. Alright, so the application is loading the fxml, which is loading the stadium controller. So everything is all working. Let's actually get the sell button to do something. So we want the sell button to read the value of the text field. Beforehand, last week, we had a text field, and then we could write getters and setters for that. So how do we link up this text field in the fxml to a text field in the controller? And the way you do that is by giving it an ID. So on our text field, I'm going to give it an fx:id of celltf. And then in the stadium controller, I'm going to create a new text field, and I'm going to give it the same name of celltf. And I'm going to put the @fxml annotation above it. And what this will do is JavaFX will just automatically link these celltf directly to the celltf in the fxml, magically. It's very nice. So let's create our setters and getters for this. Okay, so there's our two setters and getters. And on our handle sell method, we want to get the amount, sell it, and then we will set the amount of the text field back to 0. How do we sell it though? Well, we need a stadium, don't we? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make, just for today, I'm going to make the controller create the stadium. So I'm going to make the controller have a private stadium called stadium, and it will create its data. So now the controller is managing the view and also holding the model. From that stadium, I will get the group and I will use the sell method. And if you remember, that actually sells seats. Cool. Well, it's resetting the text field, but we can't see if it's actually doing anything. So let's now actually link up all of these texts to the model. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a way for the FXML to read the stadium. So I'm going to make a get stadium method. And this will just return the stadium. In JavaFX, when you make a getter, you should always make them final. That makes sure that they work well with JavaFX. So inside the stadium, there's a get group. I will also make this final. Inside the group, there are a couple getters already defined, and I will just make them final as well. Okay, once you've made everything final and you've defined all the getters, now it's time to link the FXML to that model. So I'm going to change the text property, and I'm going to use the syntax where I have a $, and then $, and a curly bracket. And in here, I'm going to set it to the controller. In the controller, there's a get stadium. So I'm just going to write here controller.stadium. Inside the stadium, there's a get group. So to access the group through the stadium, we just write group. And then from the group, there's a get name. So that would just be name. So you're creating this path from the controller all the way to the thing you want to display. And the path is made with those getters. So just remove the word get, and that leaves the name. And if you've typed everything correctly, it should display what you've done. So let me do the rest. Okay. And now everything's displaying. Let's try and sell something. It's not updating. So why isn't it updating? We are definitely selling something. But the problem is that JavaFX thinks all of these 6 things here are immutable values, right? So they will never change, it thinks. But that's not true. We need to tell them that actually the sold, income, and left, actually they do change we need to make them properties. Okay? Get name, get capacity, and price. Those three can stay immutable. They never change. The things that change are sold, income, and left. So let's work on sold first. I'm going to change, instead of just a simple integer, bad choice of words, instead of just an integer, I'm going to create an integer property. And I'm going to set it to a new simple integer property. The integer property is the thing that allows JavaFX to update the view dynamically. But it doesn't actually define how to store a number. The simple integer property just gives it the ability to store a number. To set an integer property, you just have to use the set method. So sold will start off at 0. And to get it, we need to use the get method. Here we do sold plus equals number. Remember, plus equals is the same as saying like that. So this is sold.set, sold.get plus number. And there is one last thing to make sure that JavaFX knows that it's a property, and that is to actually provide the property itself. So I'll make another method here, and I will return a read-only integer property, and I'll name it sold property. Note the case. It must be camel cased. And here I will just return the property of sold. So now, because we've made the read-only integer property, cells should dynamically update. Okay, but what about income and left? Remember how they are not actual values stored in memory, but derived values from sold. So let's make them into properties as well. So I'm going to make a double property called income. I'm going to initialize it to a new simple double property. And I'm also going to create another integer property called left. I'm going to set it to a new simple integer property. And here's one of the coolest things about JavaFX properties is you can specify dependencies. So I can say, I want income to be bound to the value of sold multiplied by the price. So what this will actually do is, whenever sold updates, it updates income as well, with this formula here, sold multiplied by the price. So I will modify my getIncome now to use that income property, so income.get, and I will also create the getter for that property, read-only double property. And let's also do getLeft. So left.bind, and I'm going to bind, what am I binding it to? Capacity minus sold.get. There's a class called bindings, and inside bindings there's tons of these dynamic ways of binding values in JavaFX. The one we're interested in is bindings.subtract, and we're subtracting capacity from sold. Cool. So I created the getter for the property, and also the getter, the standard Java Bean getter as well. So now that I've done all of those and have created the JavaFX properties, all three values should update dynamically and instantly as soon as you set sold.